What's up, guys? We got ourselves some breaking news here, and this speaks not only to the huge division that we're seeing on the internet, but this really does speak to how divided our country is when it comes to issues regarding race. Breaking news, the Supreme Court has officially rejected considering race in college admissions, striking down affirmative action. What this basically means is that colleges, when they are looking at admitting students, are not allowed to consider race as a factor. Let's read just a little bit of this article. The Supreme Court ruled Thursday that colleges and universities must stop considering race in admissions, forcing institutions of higher education to look for new ways to achieve diverse student bodies. In a 6-3 decision split among ideological grounds, the court's conservative majority struck down admission plans at Harvard and the University of North Carolina, the nation's oldest private and public colleges, respectively. And this is what's interesting about this. Not only did they strike it down in public universities, they struck it down in private universities. This means that both public and private colleges and universities cannot use affirmative action anymore and cannot admit people based on race. And we're going to get into a lot of why this is an issue and why I am not in favor of the Supreme Court's ruling. I actually think that it is absolutely devastating. But first, I want to speak on some of the corruption, because I think it's extremely important that you guys understand how corrupt we are starting to realize that the Supreme Court really is, right? So first off, we already know you got two Supreme Court justices. You have Clarence Thomas, and then you have, I believe, Alito, who basically, it came out that they are basically getting gifts and going on trips with a bunch of Republican billionaire donors, which is completely wrong and shouldn't happen, because the Supreme Court is supposed to be nonpartisan. They're supposed to be neutral. Sure, they may have certain conservative leanings or whatever, but they're not supposed to be beholden to a certain political party, which is clearly what you were saying. And let me show you guys something else. Not only do you have that scandal with some of these justices' financial disclosures regarding the meetings and the trips and the gifts that they're getting from these billionaire Republican donors, but let me show you something else, because guess what? The wife of Justice Clarence Thomas, right here, the wife of Justice Clarence Thomas, who, by the way, he wrote the opinion and he was one of the justices that ruled against affirmative action on colleges. His wife, Jeannie Thomas, sits on the board of a conservative action group that backed the lawsuit that seeks to end affirmative action in colleges. Like, this is insane. Do you not see the corruption here? So it's like, well, we know how he's going to rule. His wife sits on the board of the group that's suing to make the Supreme Court case happen. How has Justice Thomas not been forced to recuse himself? He should not be ruling on this case. His wife sits on the board. Like, this is, you can't make this stuff up. It is crazy. And so here is a letter from Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama said, "I wanted to share some of my thoughts on today's Supreme Court decision on affirmative action." We're not going to read this entire letter, but we will read some of it. So she says, "Back when I was in college," let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, here we go. "Back when I was in college, I was one of the few black students on my campus, and I was proud of getting into such a respected school. I knew I'd worked hard for it, but still sometimes wondered if people thought I got there because of affirmative action. It was a shadow that students like me couldn't shake, whether those doubts came from the outside or inside of our own minds." Okay, let's scroll down. "Of course, students on my campus and countless others across the country were and continue to be granted special consideration for admissions. Some parents who graduated from the same school, others have families who can afford coaches to help them run faster or hit a ball harder. Others go to high schools with lavish resources for tutors and extensive standardized test prep that help them score higher on college entrance exams. We don't usually question if those students belong, so often we just accept that money, power, and privilege are perfectly justifiable forms of affirmative action, while kids growing up like I did are expected to compete when ground is anything but level." She's absolutely right about that, by the way, and we're going to get into this because I need some of you guys to understand what's going on here. So today, my heart breaks for any young person out there who's wondering what their future holds and what kids' chances and what kinds of chances will be open to them. And while I know the strength and grit of lives, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we get it. So like I said, I want to get to the meat and potatoes. So this middle paragraph was the most important part. And this is why I say, if you are white and you don't have any black friends and you don't know many black people and you just have zero understanding of black history and the black struggle. I literally talked about this in one of my other videos. The reason why we as black people understand racism on a different level than anybody else is because we live through it every day. We went through it, and we have grandparents and great grandparents who tell us what it was like. When you're white and you talk to your grandparents, they almost never bring up race. I know that for a fact because I got white friends. I've seen it. And I've talked to white people about this. Their grandparents almost never bring up race and explain to them how bad things were. When it comes to black households, it's the complete opposite. When I'm talking to my grandparents who were in their late 70s, all they talk about is race. All they talk about is how bad things were. So I have a different understanding of how deep the racism goes. And no, racism isn't just, oh, the KKK came and killed black people, and oh, there was slavery, and oh, there was lynching. No, racism goes so much deeper than that. There's environmental racism. There's redlining. There's gentrification. There's racism in literally everything. Every institution or system in the United States has racism built into it. And colleges is one of those examples. Let me explain to you why there's so much racism built in the colleges and why affirmative action was necessary to help black and Latino students be able to go to college. Allow me to break it down. Michelle Obama already kind of explained it. She said right here, some parents who graduated from the same school, right here, others go to high schools with lavish resources for tutors and extensive standardized test prep that help them score higher on college entrance exams. We don't usually question if those students belong, so often we just accept that money, power, privilege, blah, blah, blah. Okay, listen. There's so many fronts that go into this. One of the fronts is most of the white kids that go to these colleges, of course, some of the white people who go to these colleges come from poor backgrounds, fine. But the majority of them come from decently well-off families in good neighborhoods with good school systems and parents who can afford a tutor. Black people come from black neighborhoods that are typically poorer than the white neighborhoods and don't have access to resources and don't have access to tutoring and being able to score higher on their standardized tests. And so what does that lead to? Well, it leads to the people from these other places that are more affluent, have more privilege, and have more money being accepted into these colleges. And so the other reason why affirmative action is so important is because of legacy. I'm sure most of you guys know what legacy is. You see, there is this thing called legacy where basically if your grandparent or your great grandfather or whoever went to that college way back when, well, you're pretty much going to automatically get admitted into the university just because you have a legacy person. You have a great grandparent or a parent who went to that school or whatever it may be. But guess what? Your great grandparent went to school back in the day where black people couldn't attend college, at least those colleges. Yes, some of those white universities, those prestigious, great colleges, black people weren't allowed to go. So who does legacy benefit? Oh, that's right, white people. Legacy doesn't benefit other races of people because America was so racist back then. They wouldn't let any other race of people go to the colleges. Only the majority white people could go. So legacy is one big problem. And this is the other issue I have with the Supreme Court. They are basically striking down affirmative action, but they're not striking down legacy. You know what else doesn't get talked about? There's a lot of white people in power who donate to the school or are cool with the dean or are cool with the coaches and have that network. And because of that, they're able to tell the dean, hey, why don't you take a look at my son's application? And so the priority goes to some of these rich, affluent white kids whose parents have money or influence or power. This stuff happens all the time. Now, let me go ahead and explain some of the benefits of affirmative action. Here's why affirmative action was so important. One, it promotes diversity. It helped to increase diversity on college campuses, which has been shown to have numerous benefits for all students. Yes, it's very beneficial for a college campus to not be majority white and actually have some gosh dang diversity. What's the other reason why affirmative action was so important? Because of expanding access. Elite colleges and universities were largely reserved back in the day for wealthy, predominantly white Americans for most of American history. White Americans for most of American history had these benefits. Affirmative action helps to ensure that those who are otherwise shut out of the American post-secondary system have a chance to earn a quality degree. What's the other reason? Combating discrimination. In states that have eliminated affirmative action, studies have consistently found declines in the admission and enrollment of Black, Latino, and Indigenous people. I wonder why. Because whether you guys want to admit it or not, this country still discriminates against other races of people. America is still a racist country. Yes, I said it. It's true. It's gotten significantly better, but the country is still racist, folks. Okay. It's like, I just don't know what else to say, man. This is outrageous. So obviously you could clearly tell that I am not a fan of this, affirmative action that got struck down. And yeah, I think I've spoken more than enough. I'm sure a lot of people are going to disagree, but I really don't care. I do not think that affirmative action is the reason why Asians weren't able to go to college, because I've heard that talking point too. They're like, oh, affirmative action was racist towards Asians. No, that's not true. One of the main reasons why Asians were mostly excluded from going to certain colleges and universities, in my opinion, is because of legacy. It's not because of affirmative action. It's actually because of legacy. Legacy is one of the main reasons why a lot of undeserving people whose grandparent went to the school, who are predominantly white, get accepted into these colleges and universities over an Asian person. It's not because of Black people. Do not fall for the trick. This is the trick. They try to pin all the minorities against each other. Oh, Asian people, it's Black people's fault. Oh, Black people, it's Latinos' fault. Oh, Latino, it's this person's fault. No, it is white racism that has caused this. We need to make sure we pay attention and stick to the point here. Okay? Like, Jesus Christ, man, this is crazy. So anyway, I think that's all I got. I think I'm talking more than enough. This is outrageous. So I'm not a fan of this. This is going to have devastating impacts. Discrimination is going to rule now, and you're going to see a lot more predominantly white colleges get more whiter. There's going to be much more white people who get admitted over Black people, because now you don't have that important policy that stopped some of the discrimination and some of the policies that were put in place way back then that gave white people a predominant advantage over Blacks and Latinos. I'm just saying, you can be mad if you want. We speak the truth on this channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.